Hello, welcome back to Life on the Fringe. Today we are reviewing LGBTQ plus graphic novels. So I recently read an LGBTQ plus graphic novel that was a nonfiction memoir called Funhouse, a Family Tragicomic. And if you want a review of that book, I will link that video at the end. It's paired with other nonfiction LGBTQ plus books, but like that one, not all of them are just like textbook like. Like one of them is a play that I really enjoyed. So I would highly recommend that video. But let's jump into the other graphic novels I've read. So the first graphic novel that I read for this video is called Bingo Love. So Bingo Love is about two women who meet in the 1960s, and they kind of have an instant connection, a spark, but because of the time period, they can't be together, and so they become friends instead. But eventually, they admit their feelings to one another, but again, because of the time period, they are forced to separate. And this book talks about their reconnecting years later and kind of the stuff that happened in between. Both of them, ended up marrying men, going on to have kids and grandkids, and before they reconnected. The first part of the story is kind of like an overview of their, like, one of the main characters, Elle, her life. And then there are like short little vignettes from their life, but they're after the end of the first book. And then there is, at the end of this book, a preview of what is going to be like volume 2 to the first book. So the vignettes don't really count as either book 1 or book 2. They're just kind of separate. Overall, I really loved the illustrations in this book. It was a very quick read. It was very sweet, but it was still like touching and moving. I don't know like what age I would recommend this for. The initial story, I would say, like the level of comprehension is like middle grade, but the topics in some of the vignettes include like their first time together, and going to the gynecologist and getting like sex health tips. But to be honest, I still feel like it might be middle grade or YA, because you have sex ed in class and nothing is like overly depicted at all. So yeah, I personally would consider this like YA, and maybe middle grade, and the it's just a very sweet story, and I'll show you some of the graphics. It's just a very beautiful book, and I really enjoyed it. I read it in like an hour. So yeah, I would recommend it. Okay, the next time I see you, I will have finished another book. Okay, so the second book that I wanted to talk to you about today is Call Me Nathan. So Call Me Nathan is translated work. It's originally written in French by Catherine Castro and Quentin Satian. I apologize if I'm butchering those names. And it's translated by Evan Magore. So this is a graphic novel. It's based on a true story, but some of the events are entirely fictional, and the characters are all, anonymized. But it's such a good book. The illustrations in the book are stunning. The book follows Nathan as he begins puberty and he is uncomfortable with his body, and he is kind of trying to figure out his identity and what it means, and you kind of follow him as he realizes that he is transgender, and you follow him through getting tea. You see how it affects his family, how his friends reacted to it, how his brother reacts to it, and it doesn't shy away from the hardships of the community in terms of harassment and bullying and being misunderstood. It also talks about the hating your body and hating yourself and feeling trapped. There's a lot of illustrations in here that I felt captured that experience really well, where the picture really did add something to the story. So I thought that was really interesting. Probably my favorite piece, or my favorite, they're not really divided into chapters, but my favorite section was when Nathan's dad is talking to his friends about what's happening, and how his friends are like reacting to Nathan, and how he has to cope with like understanding that he never had a daughter, he has a son, and like how to respond to these friends of his who are trying to be supportive but aren't really being supportive. The parent perspective on that I thought was really nice. And as I said, it's based on a true story. So the author interviewed a trans boy and his family and tried to encapsulate as much of that experience as possible while still making it a fictional piece and protagonist-centric. The other element I will say that you should be warned about is there is self-harm in the book, and it is a graphic novel, so you do see it visualized. But I also think we shouldn't shy away from that topic because mental illness is very rampant among the LGBTQ community, especially our trans family members, and it's just important that it was included in the book. But I think it was handled in a really realistic way. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about this book. I'm not going to ramble on. I would just recommend checking it out for yourself. And I will catch up with you when we get to the next book. Okay, so for this next book, I read Genderqueer, a memoir. This is a nonfiction graphic novel focusing on a non-binary character. An asexual non-binary character, to be specific. And this book is a story about their life. It starts in childhood and it goes all the way through to adulthood. And it talks about how, gender and sexuality can be so confusing. And what I really liked about this book was the different, because it stretched for the entire lifetime of, from childhood till the age of 28, you really got a sense of how coming to know yourself is a lifelong process, and it doesn't happen overnight, and it doesn't happen all at once. And I think this book was very realistic in that portrayal, and very realistic in the testing out different labels to see what feels right, and then if it doesn't feel right later, maybe moving to a different label, and experimentation, and again, like building that knowledge and understanding of yourself and that kind of introspection that happens. So I really liked the book for that reason. I also felt like although I don't think this was the purpose of the book, I think that it did a very good job of kind of providing some definitions for what it means to be non-binary for this author. Of course, everybody's experience is different, but that's the beauty of a memoir, is you really get to see in depth at how a particular person looks at the world and sees the world and see it through their eyes. And especially in a graphic novel, what I'm coming to appreciate about them is not only do you get to see it through their eyes in words, but in pictures. And there's just something beautiful about that. There's a picture in this book about gender being a landscape rather than a spectrum. And it clicked, something in there just clicked for me. And I really feel like that's the benefit of graphic novels, is that sometimes an idea is better conveyed in a picture than in writing. And I'm really new to the graphic novel world. I've read 4 in my life, 3 of them are in this video. But I think it is a medium I will return to, especially like nonfiction books are based on true story. I don't think I'll get into fiction that much, but as a memoir, I really do like it as a format. As some of you may know if you've seen my other videos, I studied education policy. I am graduating this month with my master's in education policy, and this book talked a lot about school. So did Call Me Nathan, but Genderqueer talked about school not only from the student perspective, but later the character ends up going back and teaching like a cartoon class, and are wondering if they should reveal their pronouns and come out to their students, and what does it mean to have a political identity in the classroom. And that's what I just finished researching. My thesis touched on that topic quite a bit, so that was really interesting to read another perspective about that. All in all, I just felt like it was a very good book, and I would recommend it, especially if you know someone who's non-binary or you want to learn more. I just feel like it's a good introduction, without being preachy or at all the point of the book. The point of the book is self-discovery, and I think it's something that every single person can relate to, regardless of your gender or sexuality. Finally, like I said, I've read 4 graphic novels in my day, and the 4th was also an LGBTQ plus novel. Shocking. So the other book I read was Fun Home, a Family Tragicomic. No, Fun House, a Family Tragicomic. And that book to me was my least favorite of the graphic novels that I have read. I have very mixed feelings about that book. For the full review of that book, you can click the video up here. And if you want to see more of my content, click subscribe, ding the bell button to know when we post. And most importantly, I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye!